Well, hello. Obviously, I'm not one to stream on any sort of schedule, but I figured tonight was an okay night to cover a new piece of content that came out and cover some stories that are occurring in the world of sim racing and on a bigger scale. So here we are. The news of the day and what will be fueling this live stream, RaceRoom released a new piece of content today. Pretty exciting. Anytime RaceRoom puts out a piece of content, their track models are always high quality. Usually they have a really nice curated selection of cars that are really well brand IndyCar. But the new piece of content is what we're racing on today. It is a revamped Indianapolis Motor Speedway that has just been added to the game. One of the first payware / paid content tracks available for RaceRoom was Indianapolis 2012. Back when the game was first released, if not very early in its lifespan, they had the original Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course layout, which F1 raced on from, I want to say, 2000 to 2006, including the infamous 2005 USGP. So that was in RaceRoom, pretty much since the game's inception, if not very early on in the game's lifespan. I might need someone to correct me on that, but from what I remember, it's one of the oldest tracks in the game. It got a brand new release today, and it's actually 50% off for the first week it's on the market, which is really fucking cool. Even though I've been, a pretty outspoken against RaceRoom's pricing structure, occasionally they do stuff that's really player-friendly, such as today, knowing that, hey, a lot of people might already own this track or an old version of it, so when we re-update it, we're going to sell it to you at a 50% discount. I believe it's either if you own the first track or just if you purchase it in the first week. It might be if you just purchase it in the first week. So, I ended up getting this track for, $2.67 US, I think. Which is just, mind-blowing. The deals they have, again, the pricing model I don't agree with, but when it comes down to the exact dollar amount, they've done a pretty good job, and that can be shown here with a killer deal of a track that some of you might really want, especially because there are Indy cars in this game. So it's another, I guess, period or series-centric track to add to your collection. RaceRoom, as I've mentioned several times before in the past, is kind of a modern ISI motor game. It runs on what I believe is called the Lizard engine, which underneath is basically just a heavily modified version of ISI motor, something that powers a lot of racing sims. The game looks great, the FFB is great, most of the cars drive great. The track models and the texture work is really well done, and it fits a uniform art style. It's kind of got this pseudo-cartoonish look on it. It doesn't really look like real life. It's kind of got almost like a quasi-cell shading effect. Just the way the textures and all that look, it doesn't look very realistic. It has a very specific art style to it. But regardless, there's a new track, and it includes, I believe, 3 variants. You get the current IndyCar layout, which bypasses essentially the old F1 Sector 1 track, and just takes you straight onto the backstretch, so it's really, really quick. You get the classic layout, which includes the old-style Sector 1 that dips deep into the infield and kind of curls around. You'll see it at the fork in the road here. You turn right instead of left onto the backstretch. And then you also get the oval variant, which I'm on the fence about them including or not, because it's cool to see more devs kind of acknowledge that oval racing is a thing, and oval racing is pretty cool, and more Europeans and just worldwide audiences are kind of taking a liking to oval racing after iRacing has kind of pushed it for so long and people have kind of gotten into it one way or another. I'm on the fence about them including it because there's just no oval cars in this game. Even for the IndyCar stuff, there's no oval config. Obviously, IndyCar, for those who don't follow the series or really know what it's about, when they race on ovals, they use a completely different wing package, which takes away both downforce and drag. So the cars hit stupid speeds on ovals, compared to road racing, where they're basically just an early 90s to late 80s F1 car, if that makes sense. So, even though it's cool to see that they've included the oval layout for guys who want to dick around, there's really no cars to race on it. So I'm not sure what angle they're going with, unless maybe hopefully down the road they include some sort of Generation 7 NASCAR. Aside from having the NASCAR license, there's really nothing stopping them from making an off-brand Generation 7 stock car like they've done with these Indy cars, because this is very obviously The FRUS is just a 2015 to 2017 Dallara DW12 Aero Kit spec car. In fact, they hardly changed pretty much anything on it. It's very obviously an Indy car, but they got away with it. So maybe in the future they'll roll out some sort of off-brand NASCAR to make use of the oval track stuff. But anyway, what do I think of the track? Honestly, these will be some of my first laps you'll see on the stream here. Obviously, I know how to drive the old layout, and I've driven this modern layout and stuff like P-Cars 2, P-Cars 3, and then P-Cars 4 when I was testing it last year while I was still under contract with SMS. I'm not exactly a big fan of this track. I think the Indy road course is terrible. It produces terrible racing. The NASCAR races that ran here last summer were just a clusterfuck for a variety of reasons, from just the track layout not being very good to like the curbs coming up and destroying half the field of cars, which is just really embarrassing for NASCAR. But RaceRoom, like always, they've done a pretty spectacular job of modeling the track. I like some of the esports-centric barriers they have going into some of the corners. There's tire barriers so you can't cut. There's a lot of additional signage that wasn't there in the old Indianapolis variant, so you can't cut the corners as aggressively. They did good work on this track, so we're right now just to kind of open this video showing off the AI cars running practice laps at, I believe, 104% difficulty and, I don't know, maybe 35 aggression. I'm not sure if you can actually set aggression in this game, so don't quote me on that. One person asks, what game is this? This is a game called RaceRoom Racing Experience. It's actually free on Steam, but of course there's a catch. You'll get a handful of fictional cars and tracks with your purchase, and then you're expected to buy the rest of the content. However, pretty much everything is sold in chunks or at a massive discount most of the time. So if you want to explore everything this game has to offer, you can literally buy a Pro Pack, or what's called, it might be the Ultimate Pack or just the Completionist Pack. They have a special name for it. Once you sign up or, first install the game, and you can essentially get every single thing in the game, all cars, all liveries, all tracks, for I believe it's between 60 and 100 US bucks. So if you've got some disposable income to blow, and you love racing sims, you love the ISI motor stuff, but you just can't get into R Factor 2, or injecting your old R Factor install with a bunch of mods is getting a bit long in the tooth, this is probably the way to go. Especially because a lot of the content in this game is very familiar. There's a ton of different GT3 seasons, pretty much every GT3 car under the sun, save for Ferrari, because they do have the Porsche licenses available in this game. You have tons of seasons of DTM cars, a pretty wide variety of touring cars, both past and present. There's a bunch of historical seasons like Group 5, Group C prototypes, basically a greatest hits of European road racing. Yes, I think this track's pretty well made. Again, RaceRoom has always had pretty much immaculate texture work, object placement, track design. I'm pretty sure it's basically the same guy that's made every single track on this game's roster, so they all have a uniform art style to them, which I really appreciate in games. The cars, again, visually it's not realistic. It's kind of cartoonish, I believe. But the art style works for the game, and it runs really well. That's another thing I gotta mention. This is probably one of the best running racing sims out there. I've never had frame rate issues with this game. Playing it on a variety of different PC builds, from when I was a teenager and had just a moderate gaming PC for what was available at the time, to now where I'm basically on what would be a test kit circa 2017 or 2018, what we were using internally to develop a AAA game. This game's always run great. I believe there's VR support. Sounds right. It looks pretty good. So again, news of the day, we've covered RaceRoom rolling out this track at a pretty reduced cost for those who purchase it. Within the next week, I think that's how long the deal lasts, so if you're an avid RaceRoom player, you're probably going to pick this up and it'll cost you a couple bucks. Nothing egregious like what's happening over in iRacing, where each track is a hard price at $15. This is pretty cheap. Outside of the realm of sim racing, my country's in revolt. It's kind of messy right now. I do live in Canada. Right now, there are multiple convoys of truckers heading towards our nation's capital in Ottawa to protest vaccine mandates. Obviously, truckers are pretty upset, and they're told, "Hey, you must get this shot, or you're going to lose your job." which, if you've been following any sort of current events over the last couple months, the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting COVID. The vaccine doesn't stop you from spreading COVID. It's more effective if you're old and have underlying conditions, so that if you do catch COVID, you won't get sick. But the majority of us, especially those who are able-bodied to be truckers, or, you know, guys in their 20s and 30s who, you know, are reasonably fit and don't have, you know, issues dealing with, like, obesity or other underlying issues, they really don't need the vaccine. It really boils down to a personal choice of whether you think it's useful to get or not. Similar to basically how flu shots work, right? Some people take flu shots, some people don't. It's really just a matter of personal choice, and it's always been that way. Our government has started stepping in and saying, no, it's actually not a personal choice. We're going to mandate you to get, you know, a relatively new medical procedure, and if you don't, goodbye job. The truckers, who again spend all their time in isolation, really don't have to worry about spreading any sort of disease because they essentially work from home and their home is their truck, are extremely pissed off, and there are multiple convoys driving towards Ottawa right now. It hasn't been over the news, but it's been all over social media, and they are just going to park their trucks in front of Parliament Hill and clog up downtown Ottawa until the government repeals some of the vaccine restrictions they've put out, or the vaccine mandates, I should say. And they might be successful, because for some of you guys who are located in Europe, they have repealed vaccine mandates and QR codes. And even the mask mandate, from what I saw on Twitter, it's over in England. It's over in Scotland. So right now, these people, these truckers, have a leg to stand on, because they can say, hey, look, you know, England has a more dense population than us. They have a more, you know, overall population than us, and they just said it's over, it's done, COVID's over. So why are you still trying to threaten us with our jobs and our livelihoods if we don't, you know, take a vaccine? So best of luck to them. I knew it was a big deal. Like, it started as kind of this like fringe, you know, rumblings that, oh, the truckers might protest this a bit. Until I woke up, I would say 2 or 3 days ago, were like people I race with, people who, you know, I just have on Facebook who are like friends, you know, or like chicks you follow on Instagram who like 99% of the time post half-naked selfies of themselves when they're posting about it and saying they stand with the truckers and they're tired of this complete bullshit. It's, that's how you know it's big. Our news is unfortunately trying to censor it, which is just bizarre to live through. You know, this is the kind of stuff that we learned about in schools regarding like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, on how the news in those countries would work during those times of communism or tyranny, and just how bizarre it would get. And we were taught in school that like this will never happen again, and now it is, and we're living through it and we're watching it play out. Like it's either NAV Canada or Environment Canada. You can watch basically just for like weather. You can see, you know, a map of all major highways throughout our country and click basically on like webcams to see like road conditions. NAV Canada or Environment Canada, I forget which one it is, are disabling the cameras so people can't see the convoys passing through because they're so big. So people are having to go to TikTok and Instagram to share videos of them, like, you know, taking videos of trucks passing by, and like, it's big, guys. It's not one convoy. It's several small convoys, just because like everyone needs to fuel up at different times, but like people are starting to take screenshots of like Google Maps. And like, you know, like convoys that are like 10, 11, 12 kilometers long of just trucks passing through. Dylan Hale says, honestly, the worst part is the media censorship. America's going through the same thing, and I hope and pray we stand up soon. Yeah, Canada's standing up. And the news, again, our news and our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, are going on and having these press conferences saying it's, you know, a fringe, white nationalist, right-wing extremist movement. But then, like, CTV News, which is one of our, you know, our big cable news providers, kind of like Fox or NBC is in America, they ran a poll saying, like, do you support the truckers? 78% said yes. The entire country's, like, on board with this. And being like, yeah, we're fucking sick of COVID. We're sick of mandates. We're sick of just bullshit. It went from 2 weeks to stop the spread to, if you don't get the shot, you'll lose your job. The entire country is pissed off. Multiple convoys of trucks are converging on Ottawa right now. They'll probably arrive by the 28th or the 29th. They have a leg to stand on because other European countries have repealed all mandates and basically said, yeah, COVID's over. So hopefully it stays peaceful, and hopefully, you know, everything gets repealed within the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of what's been on everyone's minds right now as a Canadian. Again, it's not just fringe, you know, right-wing extremists, you know, posting about this shit. It's like I signed on Instagram today, and like some of like the scene chicks I follow, just because like they're hot, because I'm a guy and I'm single, right? They're not posting half-naked selfies anymore. They're posting about the trucker convoy. It's bizarre. It's not what I expected from like certain accounts I follow, but like everyone's on board with this. So it's really, really exciting to see. In the USA, Joe Biden's vaccine mandate was deemed unconstitutional and they blocked it. Exactly. So like all of these people protesting now have a leg to stand on, which is really exciting. It's no longer, you can no longer smear these people as, you know, white nationalist. No, it's just a fringe group of 300 people. Anytime they run like an online poll, do you support these protests? Then 78% of our country said yes. All of these mandates, whether they be mask mandates or stuff that like Biden tries to impose in the United States, they're all getting blocked. Like, it's not working. It's falling apart on them. So when it comes to living in Canada, you know, we're about to have our big protest, and whereas in Australia there was a bunch of fuss made about, you know, the truckers might protest or clog up supply lines to defy the vaccine mandate. Not a lot came of it. Here it's like the opposite happened. Here it's like you're signing on social media and like half of my friends list are posting about it. Like one of the guys I raced late models with in BC a few years ago, his someone he knows is in the protest because he's a logging truck driver, so he knows someone who's like, yep, like I've got the disposable income. I can drive to Ottawa and camp out for a week until they block the mandates. I can't believe how big this is. It's really impressive. The difference is Biden has already threatened to bomb us with F-16s, so that's fun. Yeah, you guys have some serious problems down there. I feel really bad for you. Honestly, I feel bad for Biden. The guy's old. He's got dementia. And they're still trying to parade him around as leader of the free world and, like, make him do these press conferences that he's obviously not mentally prepared for. He's not capable of going through them without stuttering or saying, like, crazy shit, like, oh, I'll bomb my own citizens with F-16s. And no one has stepped in and been like, this is fucked up. And the news instead covers for him. It's so bizarre. But I mean, I said this a year ago, like, when he was elected, like, okay, if you want to try and say that election was legitimate in the States, because it very obviously wasn't. Like, just looking at it, it's bizarre. You have 81 million people supposedly voted for a politician whom no one will go see a public speaking engagement with. This would be like if Metallica said they had 81 million Facebook followers, and then they held like a major concert tour. And then like their first stop in like Baltimore, Maryland. You know, they played the Ravens Stadium, and 6 people showed up. You know, like that's how bizarre this is. But I said when he got elected and, you know, nothing came of some of the protests like on Jan 6, I'm like, okay, like if you really believe that he was elected fairly, like, you are welcome to go down this path, because I promise the grass isn't greener on the other side. And what do you guys have a year later? You have a president threatening to bomb his own citizens and saying crazy shit in every single press conference. That's what you get for defending it and supposedly voting against mean tweets. I'm glad I live in Texas, says Rico92. Well, I agree with you. If you're in a conservative state, you're okay. Up here in Canada, like Alberta is basically the Texas of Canada. So like I don't feel alone in my views or opinions on certain things. How about that? Like everyone's kind of one frame of mind up here. Moving on from the vaccine mandate protest and Biden being senile and Trudeau being a cuck, let's go back to the sim racing world. For those who are somewhat interested in the whole Jason Jacoby saga, there's been developments on that front. So, thanks for coming out to the stream, because you'll learn a little bit of tidbit of information here. Mr. Jacoby, there was talk that, you know, his whole court process would start either the 24th or the 26th, which is today. It didn't start. From what I understand, basically his whole jail has COVID, so the jail is effectively on lockdown, because that makes sense, right? You know, everyone's on lockdown because everyone has the sniffles. But what this means is that his legal defense, whether it's a team or just his public defender, I don't really know at this point, I haven't kept up on that, wasn't able to meet with him in time to like kind of counsel him and plan for today's court date. So they basically just asked for a continuance. Now, because he's violated his bond, he's going to sit in jail just basically until the next court date. So it's a bad thing for him, and it's a good thing for us, because every date that this gets pushed backwards, he just sits in jail indefinitely. Dylan Hale says, again, the most pathetic thing is there are actual people in America who believe Biden's a good president and are cheering him on. It's fucking terrifying. Honestly, it's Twitter bots. I mean, like, once you understand what, like, or not what viral marketing is, but the scope of viral marketing and how many Twitter bots are used to push certain narratives, not even just in the realm of politics, but like when it comes to just like video games, to music, to movies, how many major companies pay for just like fake accounts to like say positive things, you know, about X product or Y brand. I really don't believe in anything I read on social media anymore. It's not even, again, it's not even a political thing or like a media thing. Like, there were sports teams doing it. Like for the Washington Redskins, it was like Dan Snyder or someone from that group paid Twitter bots to like literally all tweet the same thing about how great of an owner he is, and like one of the sports news sites like caught it and took screenshots of like 12 different accounts writing word for word the exact same like tweet about how great of an owner Dan Snyder is. Like, it happens everywhere. So like, honestly, if you see like, you know, people dressed as unicorns with pronouns in their bio saying, you know, they love how great of a job Biden's doing, like, don't put any stock on it. There's a chance those people don't even exist. I've caught, and this is another rabbit hole for like a different video, but like some of us in the NASCAR, I guess, YouTube community have caught fake accounts astroturfing NASCAR posts. There's some really weird shit over there if you know, have a keen eye and really good attention to detail. Like I found one chick, and this is kind of a tangent at this point, but it goes back to our original topic. I found one chick on like the NASCAR Twitter realm who I don't think existed, or was a paid astroturfing like account. Like it was some chick who claimed to live down east in Montreal. Okay? Like I went on her Instagram because her Instagram was connected and stuff like that. But like all the posts were uploaded within a span of a week. And they ranged from her being in like Florida at MLB spring training to like a little tiny hockey rink in Massachusetts. And then supposedly she lived in Montreal, but she was also attending games at the Toronto Skydome. Or whatever it's called now. I know it as the Skydome. So I'm like, how during a pandemic are you traveling literally all the way up and down the East Coast at like 20 years old? Because usually if you follow someone, you know, who's normal who posts on Instagram, they're not jet-setting around the world at 20 years old and posting all these like really artsy, like, I don't want to say high-class pictures, but it was weird. Like very, very artistically styled pictures of her in like 4 or 5 different cities that like cost a lot of money to travel to, when you're supposedly just like, you know, a 20-year-old woman living in Montreal. And then I went through her Twitter feed, and every single time Ryan Blaney had won a race, she had commented saying, on the official NASCAR post saying, you know, I'm a Ryan Blaney stan first and a NASCAR fan second. And it was word for word the same tweet every single time, always responding within a minute of a Ryan Blaney victory post. And it had like the exact same grammar and punctuation mistakes, like a space between the final word of the sentence and a period. So I'm like, this account's fake. And it was like, even going into like her Twitter likes, you know, like, let's be honest, like 20-year-old woman, you know, do not follow, you know, people who are very niche followers in a certain industry. Does that make sense? Like, she was following, like, Jeff Gluck and the NHRA. And, like, various NHRA teams. And various NASCAR teams. And yet her social media feed literally had nothing to do with NASCAR. And was of her, like, drinking in a winery. Or, like, going, you know, apple picking. But yet she was following Jeff Gluck. Who, like, even, like, hardcore NASCAR fans don't follow Jeff Gluck, you know? You have to be, like, a pretty particular person to be interested in, like, what, like, individual NASCAR journalists are tweeting on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? It was bizarre. It was really, really bizarre. No, and the photos weren't taken in Dubai. It was just, like... Basically, it was like, you know, your millennial/Zoomer Instagram influencer who took a bunch of generic shots of, like, her skating or, like, her apple picking with a friend. But yet everyone she was following was, like, individual NASCAR crew chiefs. Like for example, like, my friend... One of my friends is like a sex toy vlogger. And she makes, like, YouTube reviews of sex toys. And she makes, like, vlogs of, like, her going and picking out, like, decorations for her house. If I clicked on her profile and saw her following, like, Booty Barker or, like, Paul Wolf, I would have questions. Do you know what I mean? Like... It's bizarre. Next topic of discussion, because someone brought that up. Again, we'll eventually get to the on-track product. That's why I'm showing off these guys, turning laps here just in their lonesome. I can abuse my AI bots however I wish. They have no emotions anyway. Motorsport Games did a NASCAR 21 Ignition Town Hall Q&A session. Basically to save face. There's rumors out there that NASCAR is looking of taking the license or just backing out of the contract they have with Motorsports Games and giving it solely to iRacing to make not just iRacing better, but some sort of mass market release, potentially with the help of Monster Games, which they just recently acquired. Monster Games are obviously the guys behind the NASCAR Heat franchise, as well as the really underrated Tony Stewart SRX game. If you can get that on a discount, I do suggest picking it up to see what a boxed product can and should look like for, like, a niche racing series. It's really underrated. So, Motorsport Games, to save face, with the company dropping rapidly in stock value, they entered the market at, like, $30 a share. They're down to, like, $3.8 per share. It's messy. As well as, I think they had, like, 19 people concurrently playing the game in the last 24 hours. They put out this, like, 20-minute town hall Q&A video, you know, just answering community's questions that you could submit. It was really embarrassing for them. On some level, I feel bad because they basically put one of the game designers out there to field a lot of the questions, and pretty much every question he answered was, "Hey, that's a really good idea for a feature, but, like, maybe we'll include it in the game or a future game at some point." Like, he basically just recycled the same answer for, like, you know, 20 straight minutes. I felt really bad for him because, like, I know what it's like to be in someone's shoes like that. Like, my name is attached to the Fast and Furious Crossroads game. And, like, that may affect opportunities for me to get work in the future. Thankfully, it hasn't, but, like, looking forward, if you go and apply for a company and they're like, okay, well, what games did you work on previously? And I'm like, oh yeah, I worked on a game so bad that Angry Joe, as well as, you know, Moist Critical, made videos on it in the same week. And not only that, but in the middle of their rant videos about how bad the game was, they singled out the QA team, which consisted of me and 4 other people. I know what it's like to be in their shoes and be like, wow, like, I just got, like, humiliated by the company I work for because we put out a product that literally nobody liked and everyone made fun of. Yeah, Dylan, I definitely agree. The Q&A was just insulting. Because it was... The questions asked towards Motorsport Games were really not outlandish. In fact, I thought they were pretty reasonable. It was just like, hey, can we get a rearview mirror in the cockpit? Because, like, I can't see behind me. Or can we get just a rearview mirror at all? One of the two. And then, like... the designer basically had to say like, hey, that sounds great, and we're going to add a rear view mirror for our next gen upgrade. But if you own the game on PS4 on Xbox One, which most pretty much do already, we're not going to add it into the game because it'll decrease frame rate too much. Bullshit. How many PS4 and Xbox One driving games already have a rear view mirror like with no issue? You know, like P-Cars has a rear view mirror. You know, other NASCAR games obviously had a rear view mirror. Gran Turismo 4s have a rear view mirror. Like, it's a standard feature. Like, the fact that it was removed is just like, how did we even get to that point? Oh, the comment section is getting messy. But yes, we'll stay on this Motorsport Games Q&A topic for a bit longer before I circle back. The Q&A was insulting. You know, people asked for pretty much basic features that were, you know, not even like gameplay modes. Nobody's asking for like lightning challenges to come back. You know, people are literally asking like, hey, you know, for practice mode, can we spawn in the garage and then drive out on the track, which is a standard feature of R-Factor 2, the engine they use. It's even a standard feature in this game. They just changed the spawn points of where the cars spawn. You can do it in R-Factor 2. It literally comes with the default game. If you load into, like, Mountain Peak Speedway in R-Factor 2, which is the default unlicensed version of Charlotte, you start in the garage area. So someone's like, hey, can we have that? Because that's cool. And, like, we know your engine can do it. That's why you purchased that engine. And the developer basically has to say, like, oh, that seems really cool, but no. Maybe in a later game. That may or may not come. It's just bizarre. So, again, I feel really bad for the guy that they had to parade out there because, like, they put his name and face and said, you know, go answer these and try not to piss off the community, and, like, he was never going to win that. So, like, hopefully it doesn't, like, affect his work opportunities in the future, because I'm sure a lot of people, like, on Motorsport Games are, like, nice people, and, like, some of them are pretty talented at what they do, right? Like, people really don't understand the concept of, like, a team effort when it comes to developing video games, right? But, like, when you're part of a project that tanks that badly to the point where only 19 people are playing an officially licensed product, and it's the only option on the market for them, like, there's no other NASCAR game people can go play. And NASCAR just as a game series, like, there's a lot of NASCAR games out, or there's not a lot of NASCAR games out there. There's one. And people still won't play it. It's not good, man, but what do I think will happen with Motorsport Games in the future? Well, from what I understand, if the stock price dips below $1 a share, they fall off the market completely. So we're closer to that date than we are, obviously, at the beginning of this whole venture. Like, I don't think they're going to sit at $3, like, perpetually. I think the longer this goes on, and when they report their revenue for their Q1 2022 investors call, I think it's going to get really messy for them. Robert Tinsey. Hey, that's another good topic we should probably address before I get going here. I see you and Ian patch things up. Any job opportunities? Yeah, I just don't want to talk about them. I don't want to spoil things. Like, I haven't signed an NDA or anything yet. But, like, I don't want to spoil things. Because, like, new games are important. He obviously wants to make a new game. There's obviously something underway. It might even be a little bit more underway than what we originally suggested in the live stream. Some of that stream might have been a bit, I don't want to say rehearsed, but, like, it was a formality to get the news out there. Things were already moving behind the scenes. But, like, the big thing is I don't want to spoil things. Because it's fun. I miss being 18 or, like, 15 years old and hearing about a game for the first time. Not having to wait 2 years and watch, you know, information slowly accumulate. I don't want to spoil it for other people, but it's cool. It's a really neat project. How do I put this articulately? it gets me out of the predicament I was in where I wasn't working. It gives me the creative control that a lot of people were kind of suggesting in my comment section that they'd like to see. And it's something no one has ever seen before. I don't want to, like, go into any sort of detail about it, because, again, I don't want to spoil things, but I'm not, you know, we're not going to try and make just another racing game. We're going to try and be really innovative with what we do with it. And I'm glad that he tapped me for that task, because I feel like I'm the kind of person who understands what the community who plays these games and how we can innovate without being predatory. Does that make sense? Dylan Hale, do you think P-Cars 4 is still under development, or you think it's been scampered for Grid? Well, no, I definitely think it's still under development, because Grid itself is kind of an arcade racing game, right? And P-Cars was very simulation-oriented. From the little work I did testing tire compounds for P-Cars 4 before my contract ran out with an asterisk beside it, it was going to be a hardcore sim. That's as far as I know. I don't know, like, what their long-term plans are for, like, content or cars or what's going to be in it, what the career mode's going to look like. I literally just spent, like, a couple months testing tire compounds and little physics revisions. But P-Cars 3, from what I understand, was a one-off. Dylan Hale, in terms of, like, entering a niche genre with, you know, a game that really shouldn't be all that terrible. It should be pretty easy to put together, especially because stuff like the ISI motor engine is pretty much just plug and play. You put in your car models, your physics, and you call it a day. And your track models, obviously. And they still botched it, but I do agree the whole, like, well, we tried and we gave you something, so you should just shut up and be happy. That's just silly. Tom Foreman, they would have to do a reverse split to increase the price to bait retail investors into buying, but the big investment firms won't touch reverse split stocks. Yeah, I really don't know a whole lot about how the stock market works. I have to text my buddy Dan about that. But they're in a lot of trouble. Like, if you enter the market at $30 a share and you're down to, you know, just under $4 a share, approaching $3 a share, something happened. You know, like, it's not good. Circling back, I will say, there's a guy in our comments, Mr. Fitzgerald. So all the elections are fraudulent in the USA. If you believe that you've been brainwashed by an authoritarian leader who wants to be king, I will die to fight for America and the Constitution. All I'm saying is that Biden had 81 million votes. Okay, like, we'll use that number as a starting point. How did he have almost nobody showing up to his public speeches? Again, the comparison I use, and it's something that's happened in sim racing before. I'll use a sim racing example. Sim Raceway at one point had like a crazy amount of Facebook likes. Do you remember that game? This is about 10 years ago. Actually, it was 10 years ago. Little company tried to make a game similar to RaceRoom, where you bought cars on a per piece of content basis. It ran on ISI motor, and they bought their Facebook likes. They had like either 40,000 or 400,000. It was ridiculous. It was like, I want to say 400,000, because it was like at the time like 4 times bigger than iRacing. But when you signed on the servers, there were 12 people online. So how do you go from 40,000 likes on Facebook to 12 people on your servers playing the game? That's kind of the spots Biden's in. Hey man, he had 81 million votes. That's what the news reported, or something to that effect. The most voted for elected leader in history. How come no one was coming out to his speeches? There wasn't like a ban on like going to assembling in public at the time. Like, people were going to Trump rallies. How come you couldn't get like 12 people out to a Biden speech? So at that point, you start asking some pretty serious questions. Well, when this occurs in sim racing, when a company shows up and tries to sell a game saying they have, you know, close to 500,000 Facebook likes, but 12 people on the game servers, how come, you know, everyone immediately says, oh wow, like, that's a fucking scam company, what the fuck's going on there? But when it happens with an elected leader, oh no, you'd be brainwashed to think that that was a fraudulent election and the numbers are being manipulated and someone scammed somebody somewhere. Why is it wrong to question in one space but not the others? Wait, Simracing was a game? I thought it was a modding service for the original R Factor. Nope, it actually functioned exactly identical to what we're playing right now, which is RaceRoom. You know, they sold content as individual pieces. It ran on ISI Motor 1, so it looked like the original R Factor. They had a guy named Stuart Cowie who did excellent work on the track models and the texture work. It actually was a great looking game, and a lot of those tracks have now been ripped for R Factor. And their whole premise was like it's going to have online tournaments and online races similar to what we see in RaceRoom actually. But if you won the race, you'd get paid a little bit of money, and then you could cash out, and it would be like real money you could make playing the game. And yeah, they just entered the market and tried to buy Facebook likes and generate interest from the top down, from investors, and make the game appear bigger than it was, and it just really didn't catch on. They had a weird pricing model too, where cars were exactly 1/40th of what they cost in real life. So when you first signed on the game, if you wanted to buy like a bunch of street cars like you'd see in Assetto Corsa, like a Mazda RX-7 or a Toyota Supra, they cost literally like 26 cents. So you could actually get a pretty big chunk of the game for like 10 bucks of just like 70 or 80 different street cars. And I think the tracks all came free with the game too. I might be mistaken on that. But you could buy a lot of cars very quickly, but then as race cars and F1 cars were introduced, because it stuck to that rigid 1/40th of the real world cost, suddenly there'd be like a Bugatti Veyron that was like 30 bucks. Which was really weird, or like certain F1 cars, they'd say, okay, if the price of the car itself was valued at 1.7 million, like a historic F1 car, a single R Factor car would be like 17 bucks, which was just weird. And at that point, people were like, yeah, we're not playing this. We don't really give a fuck. We're just going to stick to R Factor. And then the game just kind of died. The people who knew how to rip content from the game got all the tracks, because the tracks were really impressive. I mean, think of what you know about the best R Factor 1 mod tracks from guys like Virtua LM, and somehow improve on that. So everyone's like, okay, whatever happens with this game, we'll just you know, eat whatever lawsuit threat comes at us, or wait till the company goes under, and then just convert everything. So now there's like a great library of tracks for R Factor 1 thanks to Sim Raceway. But yeah, I mean, the original point, they bought Facebook likes. There were crazy amounts of people following the game on Facebook compared to iRacing, which even at that time, 10 years ago, iRacing was the biggest player in Simracing. But then 40,000 fake likes very obviously didn't translate to people playing the game, and the jig was up, and you know, they kind of got caught and quietly disappeared into the night. There was no big announcement saying the game was closed or anything like that. It just kind of died. Anyway, I think that's all the topics. Let's go racing. So, car setup-wise, I do have a couple of different setups put together for this IndyCar. I really like the IndyCar in this game. I have a Mid-Ohio setup, a Laguna Seca setup, and an Indy setup. This is from my me messing around with the game about a month ago. I did a video just kind of breaking down this IndyCar at a multitude of tracks. I did some leaderboard hopping. So I'll click through my setup really quickly here so you guys can pause the video after the fact. Yes, IMS did get an update on R3. That's what we're playing right now. So this is my setup. It's a lot different than what ships with the game by default. I probably have too much preload in it. Weak power, slightly strong coast, so the car doesn't free up when I lift off the throttle. Mess with the final gear. I believe I'm running a bit different aero. Two wing on the front, 5 wing on the back, so it's really trimmed out. Ride height is even lower. Yeah. Ride height is equalized, actually. Anyway, off we go. So, the quickest lap that's been put down is of 1:10.3. Our AI bots have been struggling while we've been ranting about politics and vaccine mandates, but whatever. It's not my problem. They have no feelings. So this is the new Indy, which is, you know, more or less the same as the old Indy with a slightly different route. We have a man about to pass us. 104% AI. I'm curious to see how quick they are. I'll try and check the chat every couple of straightaways, so I can keep up with you guys. But initial impressions, again, I rode maybe 2 laps of practice in this thing before turning on the stream, so I didn't get, you know, I didn't spoil things for myself. But right off the bat, I noticed there's a lot of like additional signage that wasn't in the 2012 variant that came out for this game ages ago. What the fuck? So, first thing I'm noticing, the default set the AI have been given for this car is terrible. I kind of noticed that when we were just covering the news for the day in the opening kind of monologue. AI cars were like scraping on the straightaways. Too much aero. That seems to be an issue here. And again, this opening lap is really just a shakedown. I'm not pushing at all. But, like, I blew the doors off the guy. Kind of disappointing. Cook the brakes just a bit. I mean, the guy I passed at the start of the lap is just gone. Okay, we gotta pick up 7/10, so that's not bad. Maybe he was just on primary tires, we'll see here. Games like Live for Speed allow you to click a button that lets the AI use your setup. Might need that here. Yeah, because we're now just pushing through one sector. We're now 6/10 up on the field. Setup so far is pretty great. Again, if you do own R3, go back in the stream, pause it, take screenshots, try running that on your own end. I don't really care if people see what setups I'm running for this, because I'm not part of any competitive scene. I'll drop into some of the ranked races if I'm bored, but most of them are fixed setup in this game. .109.4. Top of the board by almost a second. Let's go a little quicker. I haven't even used push to pass yet. Really easy track layout compared to the old Indy. The old Indy, the cars, there's a lot of like really long drawn out corners where the car tends to wash out and just be really shitty. So we've caught an AI car again. What the fuck is their line? Are you guys seeing this? Like, at least he's running over the curbs there. You know, let's follow this motherfucker for a lap. I got nothing better to do. What was that line? Like, at Indy, you typically, like, monster truck over the curbs because it helps turn the car. Right? Okay, let's start here. So I'll run my line behind him, but I'll try and give him about 2 car lengths to see, like, what he's doing on his end. What the fuck? Like, first of all, like, you cut those corners, okay, that wasn't bad, but, like, he literally took the wrong line through turn 1, so he's losing, like, 5/6 there. That's not bad, but you want to swing out. He's not taking the chicane straight enough on the backstretch. What? Like, they're turning in too late, and they're missing the apex. And there again as well, and there again. That's a pretty good corner. He did a good job there. He's literally taking, like, the wrong line for half the track. And changing the AI's skill doesn't actually do that, it just gives them more speed overall. Like, even here, you typically want a monster truck over those corners, and he's, like, missing the apex, and it's so bad that, like, I'm catching him. And I'm trying to stay behind him, and I'm like, I'm gonna run into him. Let's see turn 1 again here. We'll see how much time I can gain on 1. So we'll give him a bit of room. And I'll go full send into turn 1 like I'm actually trying to race him. Okay, that's a cut, but like that's typically the line you're supposed to run, and he just doesn't take the right corner at all. That's not good. And I noticed Asin, which was released a few weeks ago, is also like that. Like, what the fuck are the AI doing? And then this corner, again, or this corner complex, I should say, like, you typically want a monster truck over the curbs. Because it changes the geometry of the corner, you can get a better straight line run out. And he just doesn't. Like, he's a dot in our mirror now. That's terrible. Like, how am I supposed to race like that when the AI takes half the corners wrong and you just instantly pass them? That's really not good. Okay, let's do another kill lap here. Okay, here we go, kill lap. How quick can we go? See, like, that's the line right there. Probably not a great corner there. I'm getting like slight frame drops every now and then because I'm streaming, but it's not enough to like fuck up my driving. Okay, don't do that. Are we clear? Sure. This lap will not count. Okay. Gotta back up my braking points just a bit. Tires are really not falling off by any means. And this is now a clean lap. Here we go. Straight line through the backstretch chicane. Again, that's the curbing that came up during the NASCAR race. Much better apex there. Okay, can we actually brake here? Yep. So that's the line for Indy. More or less. Don't touch the grass there like I did, but over a second ahead of the AI cars. Try and go a little faster here and then park it. We'll get to your chat comments in a second here. So I was asked a few questions, it seems. Nice. New session best, improved by 9 thousandths, and the right front is now just a little worn. Which is weird, because we're always turning right, so why is the right front worn? Oh well. Return to garage, check the race monitor. Yeah, we are killing the AI here. Over a second quicker. Doesn't R3 have dynamic AI where the AI improves from doing races? Kind of. But you can still set it manually to have like a base starting point, so I have done that. There's a lot of rumors about Dodge coming back to NASCAR. All the cars being scanned at PG or Mopars. That would be a hell of a surprise. I mean, first of all, I don't know what PG is. Oh, at Petty Garage. I mean, those are just the cars Petty drove, though, back in the day. So, like, it could be a surprise, but it also could be a coincidence, you know? Because Mopars were a pretty big deal in the... from 70 till about 72 or 3, when Chrysler pulled out. Hey Austin, do you have any suggestions for somebody that wants to progress through iRacing licenses but unfortunately works at prime racing hours, aka evening nights? Thanks, I'm enjoying your content. It depends what part of the licenses you're trying to progress through. I found it, a lot of people complain about getting out of rookies and say it's really hard. I had no problem with it, at least on the oval side. Anytime I've made like a second or third account just to like fuck around, I treat rookie races like a normal race. Like I try and qualify and just blow out people. I don't start at the back and try and click off clean laps, because then you have to deal with shitters who are driving the same pace you are, except they're genuinely trying. So while you're just kind of like putting around at the back and trying to gain SR, you're dealing with retards who are spinning their car out right next to you. I found it much easier to just drive balls out and drive as hard as I could and just get away from the retards behind me, because that meant I would spend 2/3 of the race out in clean air, logging clean laps, you know, to accumulate within the system. I think it's called like the corners per incident calculation to jack that up. And then as you start catching people, when you're lapping people on a short track, you usually catch them one at a time. You rarely catch big packs of cars. And like 95% of people, when the leader's behind them, are usually smart enough to pull out of the way. As opposed to, again, like rolling off 12th of 16 cars and then starting in the middle of a pack, getting caught in the turn 1 clusterfuck, and then having to pass or just drive around people who are all bunched up for like half of the race. If you qualify like up front on the front row, which is pretty easy to do in a rookie race, because usually you're racing against like kids or people who are drunk, let's be honest here. If you qualify on pole and check out by turn 1, if there's a wreck behind you, you miss it, because you're in the lead. And then you spend 2/3 of the race just logging 0 CPI. I'm trying to figure out why RaceRoom updated this track. Is there more coming or just a random update? It seems to me like a random update. Because, I mean, they released TT Circuit Assen like a couple weeks back. And, like, does any, like, major racing series even run there? Like, is that on a GT3 schedule? Is that on, like, a DTM schedule? Like, it probably is, but it's definitely not a circuit that would come to mind in terms of, like, putting out compelling content. Sauce Jockey. So in a crossover of my internet spaces I didn't expect, one of the dudes I follow on Twitter found Jason Jacoby, and his tweet about it went semi-viral. You should ping that to me. That looks funny. I know Critical Penguin Zero reacted to it, because a lot of people don't realize Penguin Zero / Critical / Charlie White, whatever you call him, he's a big YouTuber. His dad is a big iRacer. Or I shouldn't say like a big in the sense that he's like super high up in iRating or whatever, but like his dad is like a massive NASCAR fan. So his dad's on iRacing all the time, so like he knows about it. Because like his dad's like somewhat active in the community, I guess. So Critical like reacted to the video and was like, wow, what the fuck. There's also some like, Critical was at the, I think he's talked about this on a stream before, he was at the 2002 Aaron's 312, like the biggest Talladega crash in NASCAR history. The Busch Series wreck that took out like every car. He was apparently at that race. Like, he's talked about it on streams. He's like, yeah, my dad took me to a NASCAR race in Alabama, and I saw a crash, and it was like the biggest crash in NASCAR history. And he's obviously not a NASCAR guy, so he didn't really describe it accurately. But he's like, yeah, like, I saw this one particular wreck at Talladega when I was a kid. So I started doing the math on it, and I'm like, that was probably the 2002 Aaron's 312, because he's like only a couple of years younger than me. So a kid would mean a NASCAR race at Talladega in the early 2000s. And if his dad's a huge NASCAR fan, they probably had Busch Series tickets. So that's like a weird piece of trivia about him that, like, I've pieced together, because he has a huge fan base, man. He's got like a podcast going that's actually really good. He's got like a massive YouTube following. He kind of ebbs and flows based on what his content puts out. There's times where he'll like just make like videos opening Pokemon cards because he's a rich YouTuber, and those videos are kind of lame. But yeah, it's wild. Oh, you can even see it there on the screen. The AI all check up for one. Like, they literally don't know how to navigate it. Whoever did the AI, if you're listening, Mr. R3E people, try and make the monster truck over the curbs. So this was a problem at Assen as well. In iRacing news, apparently they've been scanning cars in Petty Garage, including a 70 Superbird, which I'm pumped for. I am as well. That's pretty cool. The best car on iRacing currently is the 87 Cup car, because I guess it released an early botched state, and Dale Jr. got really pissed off about it. Which means at 3 a.m. he was on the shitter and wrote an email saying, hey, like, why do these cars handle so funky? And after they basically redid them and pushed out, like, you know, version 2.0 of the 87 Cup cars, they're really, really good. I've driven them on my buddy's account. They're, like, awesome. So for them to put out, like, a 70 Superbird and just have it on tracks like Atlanta or Michigan, maybe California, or, you know, they could run them at Indy. Yeah, because, I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but, like, NASCAR didn't race at Indy until 1994. But there was a track built identical to Indianapolis out in Ontario, California, called Ontario Motor Speedway. My uncle's raced there a few times for drag racing. And it was a carbon copy of Indy. Like, the exact same straightaway length, the exact same banking. It was just in the middle of California. So you could put Indy on the schedule for those cars, and it'd be a lot of fun. Scroll down to recent comments. Hey Austin, the sim you were talking about, I believe they promoted a specific steering wheel that worked on all sims. I bought one and it's good to use on all our sims. You are correct. That is a very fucking good spot, Mr. John. Simraceway's biggest contribution to sim racing was not the actual game they made. They put out a wheel that could be connected on a Logitech G27 base called the Simraceway SRW01. Or, what the fuck, the AI just ran into each other there. What is happening here? It's all falling apart, man. But no, so Simraceway put out basically like a steering wheel you could hold in the air, kind of like the Xbox 360 wireless controller. But you could also attach it to your G27 base, which is what most people actually did, and it was really good. It ergonomically was really good. It was really comfortable. It had a lot of necessary buttons you needed. It had like an LED shift light display, if I remember correctly. And it was just like a really quality wheel, and people were like, okay, like, this is not what we expected from, I don't want to say a scam company, but like a company that just didn't make it and came to the market with not a very good product and kind of promoted themselves in weird ways. But like, the wheel was really good. And I think a lot of like esports guys ended up using it because they're like, you know, like, we don't really care about like the history of the company, but like, fuck, this wheel's pretty good. I know that Charlie's dad is on iRacing because I saw the video he showcased his dad on iRacing. Yeah, I was surprised to see that. But I mean, like, if Charlie's based in Florida, like, let's be honest, NASCAR racing's huge down there. So what else can you tell us about Motorsport Games possibly losing the NASCAR license and the Indy license? What's going to take? Motorsport Games devolving, iRacing buying the rights outright? No, the rumor I heard is basically that just like NASCAR wants to pull out. And it's a rumor from a guy who was correct in the past in regards to, it's from the same guy who leaked the stuff about Penske being kind of upset with the IndyCar on iRacing, and basically like pushing iRacing to improve it like as much as they could, because the product they showcased was just unacceptable. And you know, the word about Scott Dixon's kind of like weird bullying behind the scenes got into some higher-ups who talked about it and were like, this is unacceptable. And I guess basically the same guy who told me that nugget of info, and then the iRacing IndyCar suspiciously improved over the next couple months, came to me basically saying like, hey, yeah, like, I've heard from several people now that, like, NASCAR wants to pull out of their relationship with Motorsport Games, just, like, whenever it's convenient. So probably the NASCAR 21 cycle is gonna like come to a conclusion. Like, they're gonna finish their roadmap and add like whatever DLC they have planned, and then there just won't be another game. That's again, it's unconfirmed, right? I don't have like someone on the dev team messaging me on Instagram being like, so here's what's going on, can you leak this for us? Or can you leak this for me so the news gets out? It's more like a friend of a friend who had reliable info in the past was like, hey, there's another story brewing. That's as far as it goes, so like don't go running around on Twitter being like, oh my god, breaking news. Like, even on my own tweet I said like, hey, this is unconfirmed, but like I've now heard from multiple sources that like this is a thing. So what'll realistically happen? I don't think there's gonna be like a big announcement. I don't even think like Motorsport Games will even acknowledge it. They'll probably still have like the NASCAR 21 Ignition Twitter account just like up permanently, and they'll stop posting on it. When it comes time in the summer to announce a new game, they probably just won't announce a new game. Like, they'll just go radio silent. The company will like slowly fall off the stock market. It won't be covered by a lot of like big sim racing outlets because they're notoriously bad at covering any sort of news. And they'll kind of probably just fade into obscurity like the Sim Raceway thing, where they don't exist one day. I think whatever their contractual obligations they have with Le Mans, I think they'll still finish out. Because again, like, a lot of times you just have to honor contracts, right? And their Le Mans stuff is going okay. Like, they had a weird couple of issues with like the all-female team crashing out when trying to load into the game at the very start, but like for the most part the race went off fine, the Le Mans virtual run. So like they'll probably finish out that season of racing, but then I think it'll just fade into radio silence, and then people like me will post on Twitter being like, hey, like I found this obscure article saying the company fell off, you know, the stock market or the NASDAQ or whatever they're listed on. And then, of course, no mainstream, you know, outlets will suspiciously cover it because they're just horrible at covering shit like that. And then, of course, the other part of the rumor is that, like, IndyCar is also eyeing how they handle all this. So, like, if NASCAR pulls out, potentially IndyCar will jump ship as well, which would leave them with just the Le Mans license and the BTCC license. And then at that point, the company's value would fall so far, they'd fall off the stock market, and it would just be a very quiet disappearance. You still had Tyler Dohar losing his mind, or whatever his name is, Bohar or Dohar, I don't know. It's a guy named Tyler losing his mind over that tweet. Look, like, I could get into like a shit-flinging contest with Tyler, but like, for the time being, I'm really not going to, because like, I understand he's in a weird spot. Because like I said, I've been in that spot before, and it sucks. Like, how do I articulate this correctly? Like, look, like I worked on a game that like got slagged off basically from like the moment it was first announced. Not just the Fast and Furious game, but like P-Cars 3, right? And like, man, it's an awkward spot to be in. Like, it's really shitty for a company to do that to you, to like, you know, bring you on board and get you all excited, and even use your social media platform to help promote the game, whether it's like directly or like indirectly. Like, do you guys really think that video of me drifting around, what was it, Interlagos in like a modified Corvette C7? Do you really think that was a genuine leak? Of course it wasn't, right? But thankfully, like, I wasn't asked specifically to like sit there and defend the game. You know, it was just like, hey Austin, can you go like... It was literally like 8 in the morning. They're like, can you go film yourself drifting around Interlagos to show people that, like, you know, the game has, like, drifting physics, if that makes sense? And I'm like, sure, I'll go turn a lap. So I put some upgrades in the car and just tuned around for a bit, because drifting's not necessarily difficult in racing. And, like, that's as far as it went. Like, I never took it upon myself to, like, defend the game or put out videos, you know, of me talking into a camera being like, please enjoy P-Cars 3. And I think maybe that's where he just got carried away, where he was excited to be working with the dev team, because some guys, like, don't... How do I word this right? some guys get really excited at the prospect of like being, you know, a gamer all their life and then finally getting in contact with a dev team, and they just get carried away with it. So he's like, well, it's not necessarily my job to defend it, but he probably felt just compelled that like a dev team, you know, was working with him and listening to his advice and wanting to like, what's the word? How do I describe this? Wanting to contribute to that relationship somehow, I guess. But like he wasn't really obligated to, and it was probably out of his like comfort zone of what he's had to deal with before, so he just didn't go about it the right way. Because again, like I've had my name assigned on 2 projects that were like not very well received, but I knew at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, like I'm not gonna win every forum argument, and like to some extent the community does have a point. Like the games weren't very well received, and the criticism towards them was justified. So I'm like, you know, like I'll do what's asked of me. I'll go hoon around a Corvette and show you can drift in the game, but I'm not gonna make like a bunch of like monologue videos saying like it's actually gonna be great and that it's great we've removed pit stops and changed the focus of the game. And I think he just got carried away with it, because again, it's a weird spot to be in as a content creator. Because realistically, there are not NDAs, but there's non-disparagement agreements you sign with like either certain esports organizations or like when you're a content creator. It's not just, they don't just toss you money under the table. Usually, like if you're under contract with them, whether it be participating in their esports series or like you physically work for them, or you're a content creator and you're in some sort of like quasi-professional relationship with them, what ends up happening is you do sign like a small contract. Like even when I did contract work for SMS, you know, it's like a 20-page contract. And it's not very intensive, but there are stipulations in there where it's like, hey, like don't do anything that's going to make our company look bad. And it's written in a very generic, you know, format, like deep inside the contract on like page 14 of 20, right? But there's probably like, well, I know for sure with SMS there was a line just like, hey, like don't like disparage the company or do anything to bring the company into disrepute. So there's realistically something he probably signed even as just like an esports driver, as part of their esports contract or their rule book in their esports league. And I know it's in the Heat rule book where it's just like, hey, like don't like slag off our game, and like don't like post shitty things on Twitter. You right? So that kind of stuff kind of traps people into not being able to say like, to make very open, blunt, critical comments about a game or a company or stuff like that. So there's all these little moving parts at play that kind of result in guys like Tyler going on YouTube and saying the things that they do. So like I said, I don't feel the need to get in like a big shit-flinging contest. I just understand that like some guys get carried away their first time when they're aligned with a dev, and you know they're able to converse with, I don't want to say they're heroes, but like people they look up to. So they feel kind of obligated on their end to like do what they can to make that relationship work, and not stick up for their friends, but like stick up for the other person in that relationship. And they usually just don't go about it the best way. Holy shit, hey, there's someone interesting in our comments, and yeah, that's someone who can answer probably some more questions about Simracing. So that's Michael Peters in our comment section. He's kind of like, fuck, what are you, Mike? You're like a... I know you worked for an IndyCar team at one point, but you're kind of like a licensing guy and like a multimedia guy, and I believe you're definitely a livery designer. I know that. Dylan Hale says, just think the iRacing sporting code, but private. Yeah, that's a good assessment of it. Like even if you're not working for a dev, like there's generally like in esports rule books, like hey, you know, page 18 of 19, miscellaneous rules that don't fall under like any major categories. Just like don't bring our company into what's called disrepute. Yeah, Simracing for a period of time was very real, and they did make like quality content, like some pretty good cars, some good tracks. They did have the IndyCar license, and most of the IndyCar tracks on the schedule, not all of them, like they didn't have St. Petersburg, I don't think, but they had like the Edmonton Airport course, which is really crazy. So anyway, I think that's enough for private practice. I want to go check out the leaderboards here, because again, we're a second and a half up on the AI, which is not good. Gonna save my setup tweaks because I weakened the preload just a bit because I noticed when I'd get on the throttle it would rotate too much. Not happy with that, so I'll edit it just a bit. And we will go take a crack at the leaderboards. So we'll go into the leaderboard section. Again, Indy was just released, so take whatever time I set with a grain of salt, and whoever's on the leaderboard with a grain of salt. People are running 109s, 110s, 112s, 114s. So we're going to go mess around on the current Indy road course. Perhaps we're not talking about the same thing in terms of Simracing. Well, yeah, we are. It was that, like, I don't want to say it was a free-to-play game, but it was. And then it ran on ISI motor. The cars, you had to purchase them with real-world money, but they were at 1/40th of what they cost in real life. So, like, street cars were like 20 cents. But then race cars were a bit more expensive. It was funny when Tyler and his buddy who joined the comments on that NASCAR vid tried to claim non-disparagement agreements weren't a real thing. Oh yeah, of course they are. I mean, like, I'm not going to start, like, showing, like, private work contracts because, like, I don't want to get sued, right? But, like, it's for sure a thing. Like, it's not like the entire contract is a non-disparagement agreement, but, like, if you go through, like, whatever you sign with a company when you're doing work for them, it's literally going to be on, like, page, like, 9 of 16. And, like, a little one-line thing being, like, as you know, a contractor, you will agree to X, Y, and Z. You will not do X, Y, and Z, that sort of thing. It'll usually be nestled in, like, if there's any sort of non-compete clause, it'll be, like, around there. And I didn't have an NDA with Simracing when they bought things from me years ago. I was free to continue modding R-Factor that one time. That's just, they just want my content. That's pretty cool. And that's really how it should be. Like, for our current project that I'm working on that I don't want to spoil, there's a very particular physics modder I want to get involved once things are really underway. So our game drives amazing. But I want to make sure that he's not restricted from making his wonderful historic Automobilista 2 content, or Automobilista 1 content, sorry. Because I understand that, like, I don't want to have this, like, exclusivity agreement, because I know Simracing is very weird in that, like, free mods compete alongside games, and free mods compete alongside paid content for the same game. Yes, and I talked about that earlier, Mike Peters. I did a little bit of a small talk on Simraceway and just, like, what it was, because someone asked about it. But yeah, it was a guy named Stuart Cowie who did all of the Simraceway tracks, and they were, like, immaculate. They were really good, right? Like, really, really good. And then once kind of the game went under, or stopped being supported, one of the two, they all got ripped to R-Factor. But it was the guy who made all the Simraceway tracks was the guy who made the original ORR off-road racing mod for R-Factor, like the trophy truck or the Pro 4 mod. What were they trying to achieve? Honest to God, remember Simraceway being a modding application like content manager for Assetto Corsa. No, you're probably thinking of where it started life as on the original R-Factor Central platform, but then it moved to, like, their own game. That sounds about right. So, about to take a crack at the leaderboard here. 6 people on the leaderboard. Again, not a whole lot of people playing this game outside of, like, its competitions or its ranked servers, so, like, this happens. Bruno Bay, P1 with a 109.9. We, I think, smashed that in practice. Rolling start. No tire wear. No fuel. Alternate tires. Peak Simracing Esports right here. Grind out the perfect lap for hours at a time. We might not need to, though. Although I'm curious to see what track limits on turn 1 are like, but let's go. Again, this is the 2015 to 2017 spec Dallara DW12 with the extremely ugly, hilarious aero kit. No push to pass in this mode, which is kind of nice because you don't have to sit there constantly hammering on a button. Pretty good opening lap so far. I'll probably do a couple if I don't either break the record or I set it too easily. But this is a day one, night one hot lap challenge, so there's like 6 people I'm competing against. It is what it is. This game is very European-centric. There's a lot of Euro-focused content. Most of the player base is European, so they're not. Indy's not exactly the most popular track, and already a 109.3, but let's go a bit quicker. Don't remember if I have ghost cars enabled or not. I should. Not a very good lap so far. Okay, we're up half a second. Here is William Marsh playing Simracing over 4 years ago. Hopefully it lets you post a link in the chat. It's really unfortunate what happened to William. I still think about him, I would say once a month. Put down a 108.5. We are flying. Again, I've given out my setup earlier in the stream. You're welcome to go back and copy it and try your hand at this same leaderboard if you've also bought the track. This car is not raced competitively, so like I don't really give a fuck if people see my setup. It's just something fun to do. I mean, we all know how that a lot of racing sims don't give you the best default set, so it's good to have something that's like half decent to work with out of the box. Whoa. Too much send. That's okay. Time trial mode, again, it acts like an arcade game, so there's no tire wear, there's no fuel usage. I mean, brakes warm up and cool down, but it's not punishing, so we'll just finish the lap out. Yeah, William is unfortunately someone we lost in early 2021. And it was something really weird too. Like there's a Instagram post about it by his roommates because he was living with a couple guys at the time, and he was on like medication for like some sort of, I think it was sleep apnea, and it just didn't react with his body, and he had some sort of like allergic reaction to it in his sleep, and just passed away in his sleep. And he was like, I think he's like 2 years younger than me. It sucked, man, because like, I mean, we weren't like super close friends or anything, but we'd chat every once in a while on Insta, and I ran in his like sim racing system leaks for like years, so like he's a dude I saw like once a week, every night, and like sim race with constantly, and then suddenly he's just like, you wake up and it's like he's dead, like what the fuck are you talking about? And I knew he was doing really well like financially too, like he had a couple videos that went viral, like buyer's guides for sim racing that got like 2 million views. So he's able to buy himself like a second car, and like his mom, I think his mom was going through some sort of like weird lawsuit where like his mom got scammed. His mom got scammed out of money somehow, and she had to hire a lawyer and like take the person to court or take the entity to court. It was something to that effect. Like his mom didn't do anything wrong, obviously, but his mom like had to sue someone for like scamming her. And William was making so much off his sim racing content that he was like actually like footing the bill for it. So like he was being a bro to his mom, like he had made it, and then suddenly I wake up and it's like he's dead. I was really surprised how much it bothered me, because like I was like, whoa. Like there's been stories of that happening in sim racing where like you race with guys who are like a bit older, right, and they pass away during like an actual like online racing season. It happened in Brazil. There was a guy who had like a heart attack during like some sort of league race in Automobilista, and like everyone had to like stop the race and like wonder why he just drove straight into a wall, and they started having to call his content creation. Like he had all these ideas for videos he would tell me about on like Instagram and shit, because we just shoot the shit like to pass the time, right? Like a lot of people, even if they don't like each other or watch each other's videos, like the sim racing community is still pretty close, and like everyone kind of knows everybody. Like I'll shoot the shit with like David Land once in a while, but like Chris Chan or like Black Flags Matter will slide in the DMs occasionally just to like, you know, bullshit. Like it's a lot closer than you'd think. Even like my buddy Ethan like knows like Jarno Opmeer, and I'm pretty sure like went over to his house just to like hang out and like play games the other night, right? It's a lot closer than you'd think. So like to find out someone passed away was just like wild. Because you think like, man, like you like league raced with a guy for like 2-3 years, and like you didn't really get to know him, but it was just like it was someone you saw every night. You said hi to, and hey, how's it going? And like there's videos of him like commentating like a lap of mine, like in P-Cars too, like the week the game came out, and we were all just like fucking around in like public lobbies. And it's like, man, like he just like he's gone. It's weird, man. Do you happen to accept friend requests on iRacing? Actually, I'm actually not on iRacing. I usually get banned for a variety of wild reasons by them that are kind of just odd. I'm like Robbie Gordon in that aspect. I don't get banned for funny reasons. I get banned for like strange shit. So I'm technically not on iRacing. In fact, I think I got them to remove like just 2 days ago. I filed a formal like GPDR request with them to get all my data scrubbed from them. So even my like original account that I got refunded for, like, you can't find on the game anymore. Thank you, Mr. Mike, for that. That paid for my Hans device. Now I won't snap my neck if I get in a wreck. Guess I should try pushing a little harder. At this point I'm just turning laps on the leaderboard, but let's see. I wonder if I can run a 107. I don't think picking up half a second with the setup is that difficult. We'll see. Yeah, William was really open and just like friendly to people. Like him and I were kind of cut from the same cloth. We just made different content, right? I would be more critical, and he was more just like, hey man, I love this stuff. Like, it's really fun. And he would make videos on like Monster Truck Madness once in a while, which is kind of like what I did too. And he's done like a few like nostalgia pieces and stuff like that. Like he was someone, if he didn't pass away, he would have been around for a while. Like in the history of sim racing, like usually guys who start websites that are like fairly successful with an active user base, they don't just fold. Like Race Department's been around for like 15 years. Race Sim Central by Tim Wheatley was around for like ages. I picked up 3/10 that lap. So like Will could have been running Sim Racing Paddock till the time he was like 40. I definitely prefer this layout of Indianapolis compared to the old USGP layout. Flows a lot better, it's a lot faster. No lane corners. And by lane corners I mean like stuff that's really slow, low speed, like the combination hairpin in sector, at the start of Sector 3. But like visually, there's nothing like interesting about this track, right? Yeah, Tim brought back Race Sim Central because it went under for a bit, and now he's resurrected it with the old logo, but it's like a museum. So he has a list of like every racing sim ever made. And like every single track in that racing sim and how many times it's appeared in that track, and like little patches you'll need to get the game to work on current hardware, and like little bits of DLC that were unreleased. Like he's got stuff for like NASCAR sim racing that like nobody even knew existed. He's found like the Mac versions of like certain Papyrus games that nobody knew existed, or like were so rare that, like, God knows only how many copies were sold, that sort of thing. I know he contacted me a while back to, like, get a full list of, like, drag racing sims, because he wants to include those. So I'll probably have to do, like, a bit of archiving for him. Or just, like, listing what's in each game. Okay, I really want to run a 107 here. I don't know if it's faster to avoid the curbs or to hit the curbs. Half a tenth up. Ah, blew that lap away. It's kind of hard to figure out where to brake for that corner. Because it's an infield track, like, the markers, there's no... Aside from the brake markers, there's no, like, clear visual reference point, because you're really just running in an open field with, like, walls around you. Charging entry on the corners. Don't do what I do. Okay, try this again. I'm weaving on the straightaway because I'm trying to read the chat. As you can see, it's not... My second monitor is not in a very friendly position. Swung out too wide there. I really just need a better final sector. The track's so simple that, like, it's hard to find where you can gain and lose time. Can't believe I saved that. How am I down 6 seconds? That's not good. Or not 6 seconds, sorry, 6 tenths. What's interesting is the turbo stops spooling and kind of hiccups if you let the car hit the rev limiter. It's not like iRacing's where it just keeps spooling, I guess. God, you can, like, muscle the fuck out of these things. This is pretty good. It's got that really shitty low-end torque that these cars are notorious for IRL. Gain a tenth. Let's fuck up this braking zone again. That was a great lap. I don't think it'll be the 2 tenths I need, but it'll be very close. Okay, it was 4 tenths. I underestimated. So that's a 107.7. Let me go through my setup here and try and see what it changes from default, because there's a... Oh, and you know what? That's handy. Cool. Even better. So, RaceRoom has a really smart thing where it'll always compare your current setup, whatever you've loaded, to the default setup. So this white little indicator on this menu is what it's currently set at in my custom set, and this little faint red marker, that's the car's default value. So I'm going to go through everything that I've changed here to kind of show you how bad a default setup can start out with. First of all, my steering lock, I've increased it a bit. Decreasing the value means the front wheels wheels will steer more slowly for a given steering input, whereas increasing will speed up how fast front wheels turn. So I've turned the lock up just a bit, so the front's basically more reactive. Like it's twitchier to drive on a steering wheel, and I run 340 rotation for these cars, which I found is a pretty nice balance between like twitchy but not too twitchy. FFB multiplier I turned down to I think it starts at 1.8. I turned to 1.6. Brake bias, I move it slightly back. It starts at 55. I put it at 53. But that's to free the car up at Indy because there's a lot of like flat corners that you need rotation on, and I like it to rotate on the brakes. So let's go to the driveline first because I like doing things out of order. Engine map, map 5. This is of course just your, what's the word I'm looking for? Your kind of like your power output. So this is your fuel economy, which for any sort of sprint race or any sort of like hot lapping competition will always be 5. It looks like I've turned up the engine braking from default. Default looks to be 6. I've turned it up a bit more. And basically it adds a small amount of acceleration when you brake to stabilize the rear, which is something I believe iRacing teaches you how to do in the Mazda Miata to prevent the car from swapping ends. Basically, on higher horsepower cars with this option, you can have the game do that for you, basically. See you, Mr. Derek. We will then go to the electronics, which you can't do anything, which in this situation, I wish developers would just blur out this screen, because it's not very user-friendly to have a page where you can't adjust anything. Back to the driveline, though. Let's go to the bottom of the screen, which I almost forgot. I haven't tweaked the gears at all. I thought the gears are pretty good. I did change the final gear. The default final gear is just way too short, it looks like. Default is a 450, which would be, honestly, it would be fine for, like, I think it'd be fine for a shorter track, like Mid-Ohio. But Indy, because we're using the NASCAR front stretch, it goes on for ages, right? Differential, for whatever reason, power was maxed at 89. That's kind of fucked up. I mean, when talking with Richard Wilk, when we did our early 90s kart stream for Live for Speed, it wasn't uncommon for the Lolas and teams back in that era to run like a power of 60%, but I personally don't like it. I don't like a locked diff or a close to locked diff on a road course car. It just doesn't work a lot of the time. So I've loosened it up significantly and run 33 power. Coast, I actually run it quite high, and the reason for this is because when I get onto the brakes and off the throttle, I'm already rotating the car with the brakes. So I don't need more rotation from the way the diff works when I get off the throttle. Otherwise, it'll just over-rotate. So coast, that basically dictates how much the car rotates when you first enter a corner, or it's part of the equation at least. So if I were to drag that to the left, it would just get more and more loose, and if I was to drag that to the right, it would get tighter and tighter on entry. So I have it fairly snug, and the reason I do that and have it snug and don't run a lot of preload for that initial kick when you touch the throttle is because what do I do on the rear end? Look at the springs. This is how I get the car to rotate instead. Spring rate of 370 on the rear end. So it's quite stiff at the back. Tire pressure you can't adjust. Ride height I've lowered, so I don't have as much drag on the rear wing. I've lowered that a bunch. Camber, I'm running like max camber. Oh, and this is pretty crazy. That's cool, that worked. So RaceRoom has a bit of a trick. It's something I learned in the Porsche GT3 car qualifying at Bathurst a few years ago, where sometimes these cars actually really like having more rear camber than front camber. It's just extra corner rotation with no expense. I'm running somewhat stiff shocks on both ends of the car, 14 and 14 on both ends. If I found the car was unloading too much off the corner, I could probably just turn down rebound too much. And unloading is right when you're powering out of a corner, start going up through the gears, the rear end will just fall out from under you. Like really, like it gets loose really, really late. Like literally as you're accelerating, not from the apex, but just like as you're approaching the exit curve, you'll find the rear end starts to wander. Just turn down the slow rebound a bit. And then fast bump and rebound so the car eats bumps, which is why I'm able to monster truck over the curbs. I turn down anything fast shock related to basically minimum. That's a trick that works in AC too. So if you're playing like with the free URD IndyCar that came out not too long ago, or you're driving a Formula car and you want to eat curbs, just turn off fast bump and fast rebounder as low as you can go. Third spring I actually don't touch. Usually the third spring is set like completely fine, which is weird. What else? Toe, I think I left toe the same, but I changed the front toe to negative 1/10. Apparently stock it was negative 2/10, but I typically don't run more than a tenth on the front if it's a rear engine car. I've softened, you'll notice I've softened the sway bars, the anti-roll bar on both ends. I run lowest value on the rear and a pretty low value compared to original on the front. And that's because usually whatever you do to the springs, you want to do the opposite to the roll bar. So if you're running a really soft bar, you want really stiff springs. If you're running a really big bar, you want really soft springs, and that's something I've mentioned this in a past stream when I've talked about the differences between, you know, a built setup versus a fixed setup or a stock setup. This is something they learned in NASCAR too. Earnhardt, there's a episode of the Dale Jr. Download with Kevin Harvick where they talk about testing at Atlanta Motor Speedway and how Harvick won his first career Cup race. And basically Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace and the guys who drove in the 80s and 90s, that was what they did setup-wise in Cup cars during the early Gen 4 era and the late Gen 3 eras. They ran these little tiny sway bars and these giant fucking front springs. But you can basically flip them based on whatever you need and whatever feels better for the car. In this game, for this car, it likes soft spring, or it likes big spring soft bar setup. But for stuff like GT3 cars, stuff like prototypes, I typically run really soft spring and really big bar. I believe that's what I'm doing in the 2020 DTM cars. And then camber once again up front. I'm running less camber in the front than the rear because it just likes that. So it's so different than what you would actually run default, which is why, you know, I started out sim racing being, you know, an advocate for fix-up racing and that it equalized the playing field. And, you know, makes things more about the driver, and you'll see a lot of people in iRacing perpetuate that argument, and it's not the worst argument, but the reality is a lot of these devs ship really bad default sets that just, like, are completely inappropriate for, like, any track. Like, the default values, I literally don't know where you'd run them, or, in this case, the default wing is 15 clicks higher than you need it to be. So, at this point, this is just, like, a crazy amount of drag. It's literally of no benefit to you. Versus 5-wing. I mean, that setting alone being so backwards and giving you so much additional drag that just, like, impedes your straight line speed to, like, a crazy extent. Like, that setting alone is, like, half a second to a second off your lap time, and they shipped it like that. So that hurts my head. But yeah, that's a tour of the setup. Again, if you own this car, even if you don't own this piece of content, like, try the setup as a baseline. Try fucking with the wings just a bit. Tried fucking with the rear gear just a bit to make it appropriate for other tracks, and you should be good, because whatever they ship this with like the crazy amounts of power and the crazy preload alone, and the wing, not recommended. Do not hit the track with that config. You will hate the car, and it'll be painful and suffering the entire time you're driving it. So, last step to this Indianapolis stream. Again, I want to show off the track and do it kind of in a somewhat scripted manner. Let's do a quick race. I hope this is the right decision. So, as you can see, I was fucking around with the DTM 2020 cars. I can drive pretty much anything at this point in my sim racing career, so I can challenge myself with a lot of cool shit. Road course is the current one. Formula US, I will be Steiner Plasden. Some of the names in this are just, like, definitely auto-generated names. And tons of like weird nationalities you typically don't see, like Argentina, Ukraine. The fake Ed Carpenter in this game is Canadian. I believe that's Takuma Sato. He's Canadian. There's some, and the funny part is, like, the names are so, like, off the wall. But, like, the skins are really good. They did a really good job at, like, all the fantasy liveries in this game. Whoever their skin guy is fucking solid. I know people don't, like, talk about that a whole lot, but have you noticed, like, the quality of fantasy skins in, like, various racing sims? Like, P-Cars 2 has a lot of those as well, where like they'll have like, you know, your licensed liveries, but a lot of cars also have like between 20 and 30 different fake liveries, and they're all really fucking good. Like, they're really high quality. Hopefully things are still going okay for the stream on your end. I'm just checking here to see the chat, see the activity. Still slowly learning this world. I don't want to turn into like a big time streamer. I just want to stream when it's fun and convenient for me. So that's why there's no webcam or any fun like overlay graphics. Anyway, let's go check the AI difficulty. 104 was too slow. So we'll start with that. I'm going to try 110. We're going to have a 5-minute practice. Qualifying time, we're going to mirror what's on the default ranked lobbies. And this is more or less the preset of what you'll run on when you play this game online in their official servers. It's always like a 5-minute practice, or just however long practice lasts to get people to file into the lobby. We're obviously going to skip through it. Maybe we'll make it a bit shorter too, like 2 minutes, just so we can load in and watch some cars go around for a bit. Their entry-level ranked stuff, they're kind of daily races outside of, you know, the longer events. It's always 8-minute quality, 15-minute race, so it's slightly shorter than SRS, but in some ways it's a good thing because you can get a bunch of races in back-to-back when the game's active, because there is an active time slot for this game and there's a lot of people online. My favorite was when Forza got rid of the standard LMP2 Porsche livery and the Expo GT4 livery out of nowhere. That's a new one. I mean, they could have lost the license to it too, right? Or like the partnership ended like that. Something similar happened with P-Cars too. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but like it's not a big deal. But like, you'll notice, first of all, there was a line of Hot Wheels cars that came out around the release of P-Cars 2 with like P-Cars 2 decals on it. It was really cool. They had like rubber tires. It was like, I've got a few on my shelf. There was like a P-Cars 2 Audi R8 GT3 car. There was a P-Cars 2 BMW Pro car, a P-Cars 2 Mercedes DTM car from the early 90s. But basically, Hot Wheels came to us like almost 2 years after the game came out, if not more, because they had had some Hot Wheels themed liveries in the game as a free update, like right as the game came out, just free for everyone. And they're like, hey, can you remove them? And we're like, we haven't touched P-Cars 2 in like 2 years, my dudes. Like we don't just update like our games randomly like years after their post-launch like content feed has ended. And I'm pretty sure we just said no. You know, like that was the end of it. So like we actually did get that request at one point, but I don't think anything was done with it. So like to check that, like go into P-Cars 2 if you got it installed, find the Mercedes AMG GT3 car, and there's 2 Hot Wheels liveries, I believe. There's like a white one and a blue one. And they should still be in the game. But anyway, back to RaceRoom here. So again, we're putting down like 107s in hot lap trim. 107s to 108, so hopefully 110 is enough. Because, like, the max difficulty is 120. You know, to be safe, we'll run 115. So it'll be interesting to see if this works. Anyway, select AI opponents. We'll do more than 7. Well, I don't want to race against a guy with the same livery as me. Let's pretend it's like a shitty SRS race, so let's put like 12 people in. This is pretty cool, too. You can pick the exact liveries, which is something I believe people wanted out of P-Cars 2 and just never got. Well, I can pick individual liveries. Hold on. That's a cool car. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. That guy's Canadian, apparently. Another fake Penske car. Fake Graham Rahal, fake Paginode, fake Montoya. What is that, 9? Fake Hinchcliffe. There we go, perfect. So we'll show up with 12 cars. So even when I'm not racing on SRS, I get to experience the pain and misery of racing in a North American time slot where barely anyone is online. How does that sound? Just imagine Codemasters removing eBay from Grid 2008. Yeah. That was kind of a neat feature they had back in the day. Where, like, you could either buy a car new for an increased price, or you could buy, like, an old car if you didn't really have the money for it. And it had slightly shittier stats. That was kind of a neat concept, but, like, after a while you made so much money in the game that, like, it didn't matter. You know, you just bought them new anyway. So I think this is the setup I was just running. If not, we'll go reload. Seems to be fine. So only when I click drive does the session actually start. So we'll go follow someone out and see at 115% AI if they're up to par. Because if not, we're going to have a serious problem. And if the AI is too fucked up, I won't race, just to prove a point. Because I'm like that. You guys know that. Okay, you can go through that corner way quicker. What is that pit exit line? I guess so they don't wreck people who are potentially on the racing surface. That was weird. This car just like randomly sped up. Feels like I'm getting a tow all the way from back here. He's not losing me, but I'm worried about what turn 1 looks like. Wow, why is he missing an apex there? Okay, the moment of truth. Green flag for practice, we'll get 1 flying lap in. Oh my god, I'm flying up on him. Hi? You were 10 car lengths in front of me at the last corner. And he just rockets ahead out of that corner. No. So, like, if I didn't run into him and have to, like, lock the car down, like, I would have passed him. And he was that far in front of me. So they ran a 108. Okay. How hard is it to make good AI in racing games? So, I think the R factor, or the ISI motor engine, or its derivatives, is quite capable. There are just little tricks you can make use of to make the AI pass or not pass people in certain spots. And, of course, anytime you clean up the AI line to make them run straighter through like an S-turn section, they'll go a little quicker, right? And that happens a lot when I mod like NASCAR Racing 2003 season, where like if I can tighten up an AI line and make them run a corner just a bit smoother, it picks up like a couple tenths. So like by default, real life pace in NASCAR 03 is like 97 or 98% AI strength, but like after I do my AI line stuff, because I typically tighten up the AI line and make them drive a lot smoother and arc their corners a lot better, I can drop down the AI strength to like 93 or 94, and it drives like I'm on 98 or 99, just because their lines are so tightened up. Anyway, off to qualifying here. Guess I'll treat this like an online race and go out first. So, like, it both is and it isn't. Like, you just have to have someone on the AI team who, first of all, you need a good AI coder, but since a lot of people just use ISI motor stuff, the AI by default is good. You just need someone on the team who knows like the little tricks and can think outside of the box when it comes to like rigging up certain AI lines or like figuring out ways to make sure they don't pass in certain corners. And there's a multitude of ways you can do that. I've outlined some of them on my channel. Basically, on braking zones, you designate a no man's land by setting like a fake hazard, so the AI like think there's a wall on the inside of the corner and don't launch stupid passes because I think the track isn't as wide as it actually is. And that's one way to dial out really weird AI oddities. There's also stuff like you can take out the aggression slider, so players can't fuck with it or like permanently lock it to just a really low value. Anyway, qualifying, we only got 14 liters in the tank. No push to pass enabled in qualifying, so this will kind of mirror our hot lap. Again, I put down a high 107 in the leaderboard testing about 10 minutes ago. So I gotta try and match that here, which I probably won't, but we'll try. And I think I showcased in a video upload not too long ago the difference between like me tryharding a time trial lap with infinite attempts versus what an actual lap looks like, so I'll probably run mid 108 here. Whoa! Okay. Might need to turn down the rear rebound just a bit. I would rate that lap 8 out of 10. 2 mistakes. Okay, 108 flat. We're only 2/10 off our leaderboard time. That's pretty good. Didn't give me a cut for that? Okay. We are going purple. Promising. Oh, that was so beautiful, and I fucked it up because I'm an idiot. Yeah, it's unloading on me. 107.5. We are on pole for the time being by 2/10. That's actually quicker than the world record. Oh my god, okay, no. We fixed the rear rebound problem now. That's what it, but you know what, like, it's fun when you wreck, when you're at a level of skill like I am, because, like, it's spectacular. You do a little twitch and suddenly you're off in the fucking sand and it's crazy. Was it gonna change? Sure. We'll go it once more. That might be fun. So, at 115 difficulty, we're 2/10 up on the field. Oh my god, look at how close these times are too. Like, there's no deviation in the AI. How are you able to tell what to adjust on the car so easily? And RaceRoom Central is just racesimcentral.com, Mr. Thiering. Yeah, a lot of setup adjustments are just experience. Like, there's a lot of flow charts out there that kind of help you. There'll be like big charts of, hey, like if your car is loose, you can adjust these, you know, these 5 options if it's loose on this specific part of the corner. And then it's experience. And it took a while to get to this point, admittedly. Because like I said, I'm not... I started my, like, sim racing kind of journey being a proponent of fixed setup racing and stuff like that. Because it was just, like, what, you know, all the rage was on iRacing. It had the most racers, so it's like, well, I don't want to be the guy dealing with setup exploits, but it turns out if you just go to a different game where, like, there's not a lot of setup exploits, your adjustments make more sense, and you can actually start reading, like, real-world guides on, like, car setup theory, or just, like, basic things you should hunt for if the car's doing things you don't want it to. And just asking a lot of questions, like, I didn't surround myself with, like, role players in sim racing who wanted to make hero cards all the time. Like, a lot of my buddies in sim racing are, like, either have real-world experience or they're part of the esports scene, so if you ask them a question about car setup, like, they'll know. And they can walk you through it, as opposed to just, like, do you want to design me a hero card for my iRacing fan page that has 50 likes? No. And already... Oh yeah, way better. I can lay on it coming out of the corner. And even there, like when I got sideways, it didn't unload as fast, so I could probably go lower, but... yeah, you can see the skid marks there where I got loose and probably lost a tenth or two. Yep. Literally exactly. I was like, I probably lost 2/10 out of that corner because I wiggled. Across the finish line, 1.5 tenths up. Okay, that was too aggressive of a cut. Sorry. And that's actually going to be the end of the session. Massive penis and run at 120 and blow out the AI, but like it's kind of pointless. I think I've established the point that like the AI on this track, the line at least, is very, very slow. And takes some corners just really inappropriately off pace. Take the wrong line in a lot of places. And over the course of a single lap, that adds up to a 0.4 of a second difference. Oh. I think that's the Canadian fake AI driver that pulled within 3.5 tenths now. So I don't really know how much fuel per lap I'll need. Across the line here in first place, yeah. 2 Canadians on pole, me and the fake Ed Carpenter guy. I think the best setup screen for beginner sim racers is PCARS 2 because of the engineer dude who asks you questions. Yeah, I won't disagree with that. That was a really intelligent thing they put into the game that I don't think many people use. But like, it's kind of a substitute for like not having a friend on Discord to explain certain things to you, if that makes sense. So skipping ahead, we're going to run a 15-minute race here. I don't know how much fuel we need. I think it'll say here. Fuel use per lap. Doing about 1 minute lap times. About 3 liters per lap, so we'll need like 30 liters. I won't chance it, so go 35. Because there is push to pass in these cars. Here's an excellent question. Do I have push to pass mapped? Now I do. It was button 3, so it's my nitro boost button for some games. I don't know what else I just turned off, though. DRS, maybe? Maybe it was launch control. Yeah, it was probably launch control. I fucked up. These cars, from what I understand, don't have launch control, but we'll try it. I know virtually nothing about car setup and lol, but yeah, I like asking people because their experiences mean more to me than just a flowchart asking me what I think and aimlessly adjusting. Yes, the flowchart, like, at first I was like, oh, these are great, so I saved, like, the touring car setup adjustment flowchart that was, like, popular on Race Department. And I'm like, wow, this is, like, really useful for me. But then it, you know, you try adjusting stuff and it's like, well, how many clicks do I adjust each thing if I need to change how the car handles in a certain corner? It doesn't really tell you. And, like, different setups or different setup adjustments have a butterfly effect. So like if you want to dial out looseness like in certain parts of the corner, like the flowchart will tell you, well, you could do it with the ARBs or you could do it with the shocks. But like they're all going to feel and do different things. So that's kind of where the experience comes in. Anyways, 12 cars in our fictional North American time slot IndyCar race. Let's go and embarrass ourselves. As you can see, the AI just get a perfect start because of course they do. Hello. Good, I have a car to chase. That was a wild start, but the starts here are usually crazy like that, honestly. It's good, I have someone to chase. I was surprised they like weren't braking until like the last possible second. The AI had not a great run out of the corner. As you can see, I've clicked on push to pass because I don't want to get too far out in front. So with a combination of push to pass and just taking a good entry into one, we're basically there. We are slowly catching him. Yeah, set the fastest lap. Yeah, they literally don't know how to take turn one. And then they rocket away. Like, look at that. Like, that acceleration was inhuman. So that's your prize for running on the highest difficulty. The AI suck at so many corners, but then they're given like hints to go quicker. So when people say the AI cheat in racing sims, that's basically what they mean. And watch this corner. This guy does a terrible job here. And then, like, mid-corner gains grip somehow. We're going to be there in 2 laps, I think. He's, like, stopping in turn 1. And then, look at that. Like, okay. I don't know if push to pass is worth it or not yet. Oh my god, look at this. Look at this draft. Holy fuck. Nyum. And he just doesn't know how to take turn 1, so he doesn't know what to do. So like the entire race, no matter what difficulty you run, is going to devolve into that. They'll beat you on every single sector of the track, but they're so terrible at turn 1 that you'll just pass them no matter what. And then they're pretty bad through here too, so me cutting and almost dying is still quicker than them. I get a better exit through here. And then he's got, whatever the AI default setup is, they run too much drag. So like I'll pull away from the straights again. Not if I do that. But that's okay. At least it made the race interesting. Tires get a chance to cool down. Oh, we're still in the draft again. Look at this. Look how far back you can draft people. That's crazy. Don't want to fuck up the front. Why are you so slow? Didn't want to fuck up the front wing, but I might have to get around him. Too much time I had to push to pass. Caught right back up. Look at how he rockets away. Like, what the fuck is that? Ideally, next front straight will be in his wake, because we are making ground. Glad I made the shock adjustment, because now we can be right on him out of the corner. Oh man, look at how close we are in the draft. Wow! And they have to back out again because they can't take turn 1 right for whatever reason. Please fix your AI line sector 3. Or no, that's the next piece of news. Shit, I forgot one in the opening monologue. We talked about Biden too much. Sector 3 is now KW Studios. Because it's Klaus Wolfharth or KW Suspensions who fund the whole project. So that's pretty cool. I mean, does it mean anything? Probably not. Maybe there's like ownership percentage changed hands behind the scenes. I need to like not charge the entry into this final complex here, because that's gonna fuck me out of the win. Almost did earlier too. Here's another quirk about this AI, they can't draft you. Or they can't draft each other either, it looks like. Like, I got a massive tow. Earlier at least. But like when the AI cars get behind each other, nothing happens. It's weird. But this would be crazy fun online, because these cars create such a massive draft wake that, like, even if you don't have the setup, like, perfectly dialed in, you'll still fly, right? Both front tires are worn. But we're so quick in turn one that, like, it makes up for our speed on the rest of the track. Fake Ed Carpenter is catching us, that's okay. I don't know if the AI know how to use push to pass on this or not. So he's in my draft wake. So, like, should he catch me? No, we're actually pulling away from him. So, like, as a player, my kind of suspension of disbelief, they call it, just kind of, like, falls apart. Because it's like, well, like, as long as I don't fuck up, he can't pass me. Because, like, the AI cars literally cannot draft. And they suck at turn one. We will watch a full run of this once it's completed from TV Cam to kind of point out some issues. So I can read the chat and interact with you guys. Because, I mean, that's part of the fun of streaming, is to hang out with people and just chat shit about video games, right? Four minutes left. I think I have enough fuel. I probably should stay off the push to pass button, though, just to be safe. Whoa, fuck. I'm gonna be very close on fuel, just a heads up. Low fuel. Yeah, I'm aware. Oh, the dash is blinking at me now. I have to say, this feels really good on worn tires. Fuck me, it's gonna be close. We're good. It's gonna be very close, though. Like, unbelievably close. We'll run out on the front straight. I used too much push to pass. I was a bad boy. And I didn't even need it. That's the worst part. Low fuel, 1 liter. Well, it's more like 1.9. If it's like 20 minutes plus 1 lap, I'm fucked. But we'll see. When's it gonna run out? Holy shit. Oh, don't ever do that again. And other cars ran out. Look at that, they're in the pits. Oh my goodness, don't do that again. That cut it a little close. How is my car still driving with no fuel? Let's ask the important question, because the AI's taken over, right? But like the car was out of fuel as I crossed the line. That was really cool, though. That was really, really cool. That was a fun race. So let's finish that up. And it just ends. Okay. Cool. Let's go in the replay. Let's watch that from start to finish, because it was only 15 minutes. It gives me time to interact with the chat, have some fun. If you guys have got any questions, now's the time. I can look over at my second monitor as the race plays out. That sort of thing. Setups are funny, they really do help, but so many times I go back and test the default and it's not so far off my setups time. That happens sometimes. Like you end up changing so much and working yourself into a box that you really aren't sure what's helping the car and what's hurting it. Push to pass is Formula E attack mode, but IndyCar? Yeah, basically. I don't really disagree with that, actually. So, I don't know what, like, any of these cameras are. I guess there's a bunch you can pick from that are external, but we'll try TV. Again, I'm in the number 3 car. Hope you guys are still kicking around here. So let's look at what happened on this opening lap, because I kind of cooked turn 1. The AI had a much better start than I did, because they have perfect throttle control. And we all fan out going into turn 1. Smoke effects look pretty nice. I fall back to 3rd. Fake Ed Carpenter takes a really... Oh, what the hell? What's this? He, like, commits to the inside line, and then he starts turning out towards me, and then he's like, oh, fuck, I probably shouldn't do that. And all these other cars on the inside follow, too. So they, like, start inwards and then fan outwards, and I shit my pants. Whoever starts on the inside fell back a lot of spots there. But we cycle back out to 2nd place. And this is about as low as we'd go the whole race. The cameras seem to be placed pretty reasonably compared to where NBC was putting them for their races, so that's good to see. I think they ran twice here last year with the IR-18. I believe I used push to pass here on the first lap just to make up lost time. I didn't know how long it would take me to catch the guy in first, so I got a bit greedy early in the run, but I shouldn't have done that. Made it a lot closer on field than it should have been. But yeah, like you're seeing here, let me show you something. Where's Chase Cam? There's Chase Cam. So like, let's go back in the field. So like, who's in the draft? This guy's in the draft, right? Let me show you something weird about ISI Motor Games. So we determined, obviously, that like when I was in the draft of a car from like 7 car lengths back, I could pick up in their wake and pass them by turn 1 if I started like this far out here, right? Does that make sense? So this is an AI car, that's an AI car. Why is there no draft? Well, he's getting a bit of a tow. Okay, and then he pulled out. Interesting. But, like, it wasn't the all-encompassing, oh my god, I'm flying, like it was when I was behind people. What about this car? There was one I spotted from TV cam. It might have been what I just showed, but like he just wasn't passing anyone. Like it was, maybe it was this one, but yeah, like he's not gaining on them. Kind of weird. Anyway, we'll go back to us now. Maybe we'll watch from our little chase cam here. Okay, good. That shortcut still works. You can use the number pad to pan around the car. It's a default ISI motor control. Sorry, I'm flipping between different monitors right now, so it's kind of stuttering. But yeah, we'll go through the field here again and watch some cars that are nose to tail. Yeah, it's weird. Like the AI can't draft each other. So like this guy's in this car's way, because this is basically how far I could draft people from. And get a massive run on them and be able to pass them into one, and like nothing happens. This guy, like, not gaining at all. Oh, a little bit. But, like, hardly enough to make a difference, right? Just odd. Just a quirk of the ISI motor engine, and it's, again, it's derivatives, right? You know, a lot of people don't like these Aero Kit cars from this era of IndyCar racing, but I think they're kind of cool. Essential skills like throttle control, trail braking, and the like. Oh man, that's actually a really good question. If you have Assetto Corsa installed, this is how I was taught to improve it. Zandvoort, the Kia Kunos default track that you probably have. If you have Zandvoort, take any street car on there. Just a street car you like. My buddy always recommended the Lamborghini Miura street car, like the 60s supercar that's in one of the AC DLC packs. But any street car that has rear-wheel drive will work. And then just log a ton of laps there. And just try and improve your time. There are a few, you know, again, if you have AC, there are a few challenges that actually take place in street cars at Zandvoort. Just try and get the gold time on those. Zandvoort as a track isn't tilkified, at least not in the AC version. So it's got a lot of like really interesting corner complexes and a lot of different types of corners where you're encouraged to play with the throttle and get the power to the ground, you know, as early as you can, even if it's only like a quarter throttle. So a street car there is going to be, like for me, it helped immensely. My buddy dunked all over me in like a private lobby we'd put up. And he's like, if you want to get like really good at like racing like rear-wheel drive stock cars, like just grind out laps here. And I was like, okay. If you don't have AC, fuck, that's still a good question. I mean, it's gonna vary on game, right? Yeah, the AI just don't know how to deal with that. What did I do? Oh, that must be like skip ahead, hey? Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point everyone owns AC. I struggle around there, so it would make good practice around there too. Yeah, Zandvoort's a good track to learn on, because like a lot of tracks you could practice on, like Volugna, Imola. I'm trying to figure out what else is in AC. Silverstone, stuff like that. It's too tilkified where it's really boring. It's not a lot of elevation changes, just like stuff to look at and keep you interesting. The turns are not very typical for what's gonna give you good practice. Zandvoort's kind of like the last of like the 1960s relic tracks, I guess you could call them, where they were designed a certain way to like ebb and flow with the landscape, as opposed to being like a modern Grand Prix racing stadium, kind of like what this is. And then street cars, again, like street tires work so differently. They're nice and squishy. They don't have a lot of forward bite. But like, don't punish yourself with like a 60s car. necessarily. Like, you don't have to run the Mira or the Ford GT40. Like, just like some sort of like modern sedan or like a modern supercar, because like AC's got a lot of those, right? Like a McLaren or a Ferrari, and just get comfy running like on the street tires, or I think they have semi-slicks, and that should be good enough. Mr. Ted, how are you on this fine evening? Zandvoort was better before it was shortened. Yeah, like the original 60s layout is like crazy fast, and it's crazy simple too, so you don't have to memorize a whole lot of it, but I really don't mind like the modern GP layout, not the F1 circuit. I think the F1 circuit is just weird now. It got a weird facelift. But before that, the Zandvoort, you know, from AC and most other racing sims, like I believe it's in a lot of like different games, like Race 07. Fuck, what else is it in? It's in here. RaceRoom. It's in shit. Definitely in Sim Raceway, which means someone made it for R Factor. That, you know, kind of like semi-current Zandvoort's really, really good. Drive a Miata, drive a BMW M3, they have the E30. Yes, that's a good one too. Any sort of like mid-range street car. Something sedan or something that's a coupe that has like an okay amount of power. The RX-7's a good one to try with. Another thing is too, like if you're part of a Discord, like do it with friends. Get a little server going, have like 4 of you jump on, do little races and stuff like that. Don't make it boring for yourself. Don't be the sim racing equivalent to the guy on a treadmill at the gym bored out of his mind. Like, make it fun for you. They did a really good job with these cameras. I'm really impressed. This is more or less where all the cameras were positioned for the NBC Sports IndyCar broadcast. So whoever their track guy was that placed the cameras deserves a raise. I love little attention to detail stuff like that in Sims, if you haven't been able to tell. I mean, like, some of the zooming and panning is a bit different than it was in real life, but like this is more or less what the broadcast looked like. And I think even back in the day on iRacing, like, usually the default iRacing cams for a given track didn't exactly mirror the broadcast angles. But, like, people on the forums would make it, and you could download, like, their cam file for a track. Nothing with more than 300 horsepower or that has more than 7-inch wide tires. Yeah, that's a pretty good call, too. So maybe, like, high-end supercars are not super good to train on, but, like, just, like, kind of like mid-range stuff, like the Mustang GT. Maybe the Corvette C7, like the street car, the Stingray that's an AC. Like my throttle control primarily comes from like iRacing and playing with a lot of the like the NASCAR stuff, because over the run, like as all the tires just completely fall apart, that's where you learn like throttle control. But if I had to go back in time and relearn throttle control more efficiently and build up those skills quicker, definitely street cars and AC. So, final thoughts on Indianapolis, this track, at least as it, you know, as it exists for RaceRoom right now. Like I said at the start of the show, it sells for, at least for this week, the first week it's out, I picked it up for, fuck, like $2.67 US. I don't like RaceRoom's piecemeal pricing model, but they at least try and compensate with making things really like player friendly in terms of pricing. And I might have had an additional discount because I am 100% content owner in this game. So I don't know if that factors into it. I would have to ask if any KW Studios guys are kicking around here. But like at the end of the day, like, it is indie, so if it's not a track you're into, like, I don't think there's a need to rush out and buy it. I don't see it being used a lot online in their ranked stuff. Their ranked stuff is usually based around one of 3 series: DTM, GT3, or like some sort of entry-level class, like the BMW 235i, or like Porsche Cup, whether it be the current car or historic car. So like you might not get a lot of use out of this online, but like the track works, right? Right? It works. It's reasonably updated. The camera work alone is pretty authentic to what the broadcast was. There's a lot of like additional signage and stuff. Like there's tire barriers in certain corners, so it's a lot easier to identify some of the flatter corners when you come off along straightaways. Like the original version of Indy in this game, when you go through the infield or you go into turn 1, transitioning from the oval layout to what would be turn 1 onto the road course, this version has more like pylons and signage than the 2012 version. So you can kind of pick out the apex a bit better. But again, like Sector 3's always made quality tracks. Like they're up to the exact same art style standard. There's not the discrepancy like there is with iRacing content past and present, where like tracks like the first iteration of Watkins Glen compared to newer stuff like what's a newer iRacing track that came out? Maybe a better comparison is like how iRacing sometimes has to redo tracks because they were just so old. And either the scan was outdated or their texture work improved immensely. That doesn't really exist in RaceRoom. So for $2.60, I thought this was pretty okay, straight up. But again, like your mileage may vary. Oh wow, there was cars pitting there already. That's weird. I wonder if it... Here's something that would be a good question for the KW boys. I wonder if the AI run the exact same fuel that you do, but I also wonder if the AI have their own push-to-pass logic. And whereas I went into the race knowing not to use push-to-pass, because I would probably run out of fuel, the AI didn't. So, like, maybe where I only used 2 the whole race, they ended up using, like, 5, and accidentally ran themselves out of fuel. That could be a thing. Long Beach is fairly new, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yeah, like, there's a difference between, like, the first OG version of Watkins Glen that got added to iRacing and, like, the newest Long Beach. Or, like, when it comes to short tracks, like... Oh, better comparison. Summit Point. Like, Summit Point looks like ass compared to, like, recent iRacing editions. Or, like, short tracks. Like, there was... Like, South Boston was one of the first tracks ever for iRacing, right? Versus, like, a new short track like the Vegas Bull Ring. Like, the shaders are a lot better at the Vegas Bull Ring. Like, the tarmac texture is, like, miles better, right? RaceRoom does not have that. RaceRoom, when you buy a track, you'd have no idea if it was made in 2013 or 2021, which, depending on how you feel about the art style, I personally like it. Your mileage is going to vary. Wow, yeah, there's a lot of cars pitting here. What the fuck? This is at the point where I was short shifting, I believe. Yeah. I'm not hitting the revs I used to. And this might be the final lap, actually. Yep, it is. Not a very compelling race aside from the fuel mileage thing. But we did get, you know, a decent amount of play out of this track. We did, you know, an open practice where we spotted some AI issues. We did a short leaderboard challenge, made some setup adjustments. And then we ran a race where we saw some weird AI gremlins, such as this pit strategy that they didn't know how to comprehend. And it literally, almost everyone went to the pits. And then the race ends. So why did I have to run this race offline instead of online? Well, here's the issue. We're going to go into the multiplayer component just to end this. And these are how many people are online at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. You have 6 people in an NSU TTS Cup. 1 person in a Zandvoort race, a GT3 race in practice, so that race won't go off. There's literally like 14 people playing this game worldwide. So I will open it up to like non-public servers, or non-ranked servers rather. You know, servers that are hosted by just like random people. And like, look at this, like 3 people in a room with vanilla content. You know, 2 people in a room with vanilla content, 2 people in a room. 1 person in a DTM 2020 room at Assen, who's qualifying by himself apparently. So like, it's dead if you play this and you live in North America. So like, you pretty much have to be in a situation I'm at where like you work from home, or like you work a weird schedule. Like if you work nights and you really want to play RaceRoom and you live in North America, you'd have to like wake up at noon and do like a race or two when everyone else is on, like, you know, on European prime time, and then go to work. But like, that's not ideal, right? Or you'd have to wake up early on the weekend and like play RaceRoom either in the morning or at lunchtime. And like, I've done that at several points, you know, throughout the years, just because like I've either woken up early or I've worked at home, but like, it's not practical. But anyways, thank you guys for coming out. That is the new Indianapolis road course and oval track. We raced on the Indy GP circuit tonight. Spent about 2 hours fucking around. Again, it retails, I believe, for the time being, for like $2. $2.67. It's something really ridiculously cheap. It's right up there with RaceRoom's common standard of quality. Looks really good. Some AI issues. That's the biggest downfall I noticed. The AI just can't take certain corners the way the player can. They're too scared to hit curbs. It seems like the AI line was made really conservative, so they don't run over the curbs and get loose, but like, it's resulted in the AI cars, if the track has like 9 or 10 corners, I didn't count exactly, but let's call it 10 corners. If the track has 10 corners, they take 4 of them incorrectly, and you can pull away from them, even on like a difficulty of 115, which we were at, by like 4/10 a lap. So by the end of it, it's just like, well, you've won the race. You know, as long as you can run on par with them everywhere else, they will sacrifice speed in a ton of different corners. Again, these are the settings we ran that race on to show I'm not like bullshitting, or I did a bait and switch and set it down to like 70 before the race started. And it's a flaw that was also seen in the Assen track. It was just not very good. Like, for $2.50, like, I don't know, you'll get a couple hours of playtime out of it, but like, I've pretty much seen everything there is to see on the track now, and like, unless it pops up in like the ranked schedule, I probably will never drive it again. But it was also $2, so I don't like give scores for anything that I review or give shakedowns on, but it's like, it's the same as every other like sim racing piece of content, where it's just like, I guess if you're a completionist, or you want it badly, like, it's $2.67 for the next week. But like, it kind of shipped with some weird gremlins, and like, I'm really not compelled to do another race again there. Anyways, thanks for coming out, guys. Sticking through what was close to a 3-hour stream. Cheers, I guess.